Welcome back, mercenaries. Welcome to your world of depravity and sin, where opportunity for profit and death is veiled behind every corner. If this is your first time hearing these reports, the design is to provide you additional contextual information around the elements within Night City, to give you a considerable advantage against your potential opponents, help you negotiate for a higher price with your employers, or perhaps live just a little while longer. With that said, this report will help you arm yourself against the gangs located in Night City and the surrounding metropolitan area. Make no mistake, these gangs aren't your typical posers and fakes, only acting hard and emulating their cinema or musical heroes. These gangs are absolutely a concrete power within Night City. Some even control similar resources, technology stores, and paramilitary assets as the mega corporations within the city. If anything, this report will provide you with the knowledge and wisdom in how to work with, completely avoid, or potentially combat the powerhouse gangs that control the underbelly of our new home. As they say, knowledge is power, mercenary. And when combined with deadly cyberware and your drug of choice, perhaps you'd be invincible. Probably the oddest and most volatile group of mobsters you will encounter is the Voodoo Boys, a group of bloodthirsty and mystic-fearing individuals that wrap up their killing with added magical rites and ceremonies. They're ritualistic in nature. They often use core tenets of Voodoo's oral tradition to help define or determine their next moves. It's a disorganized and often chaotic method to determine their next steps as a gang, but many fear that voodoo and its uses are simply a byproduct of the group's make, the historical background, and its utilization as a cover for their primary motivations: wholesale movement of drugs and human trafficking. Certainly, some of the Voodoo Boys believe in the core tenets of the oral tradition, that voodoo can be used to communicate to the major spirits or Loa to help define the future or to ordain a new leader, but at their core, it's also a tool used to inflict fear and misunderstanding amongst their enemies. Additionally, the Voodoo Boys have roughly 50 years of history as an organization, so it's possible that the original Voodoo Boys cared very little for the history of the Afro-American religion and integrated the oral tradition over time to better suit their objectives or help define a core hierarchy in an otherwise somewhat anarchist group. It's a gang that embodies organized chaos. They have objectives, motivations, and goals like any other group, but they torture, sacrifice, human body dissection, or even dismemberment are perhaps used to further their social standing as a mysterious, dangerous, and chaotic group. On the streets, they use fear tactics and threats of violence to ensure local business owners keep Voodoo Boys free from police scrutiny. They peddle drugs, fear, and manipulation on the streets of Night City and are not to be so quickly underwritten as another gang. But beyond that, they are also capable net runners, with objectives around uncovering information, likely long lost, in the old net, crossing the infamous Black Wall. Their reported leader is a formidable woman named Bridget, with a rough-faced and stoic right hand and placide. If you do encounter them or even contract under them, be ever mindful. They may just as easily acquire your services as keep your body as a trophy to mock and experiment upon. Yes, the animals. Some of you may feel a certain affinity for these muscle-bound, weightlifting, walking tanks. Some of you may be filled with a certain dread that your small frame could be picked up and pulled apart effortlessly by a hulking monstrosity filled to the brim with juice, the animal's drug of choice. They are what the public and the NCPD would consider a booster gang, or a gang that utilizes high-profile and incredibly damaging drugs to deliver either short-term enhancements like fatigue resistance, strength, or mental decision-making, or more long-term driven results in performance-enhancing drugs, akin to steroids. typically seen dominating in a physical stature. The status of a member within the animals is often determined by their sheer physical brawn, often seen with additional melee-enhanced cyberware. You may be asking, how did they get the nomination the animals? Well, beyond following a more primal nature found within the animal kingdom, where disputes are handled in the ring of combat, they also have been known to use specific animal supplements, including gene splicing or other related genetic enhancements, in some odd attempt to unlock the true dark nature of man. Their hierarchy is determined by whoever is the strongest, the fastest, the meanest, the most ruthless animal killer is chosen as their pseudo-leader. Reportedly, at the time of this report, and likely by the time you enter Night City, that leader will be a man named Sasquatch. Currently, they face a brutal long-term war with their polar opposites in the Voodoo Boys, a series of open conflicts that have now spilled over into broad daylight on the city streets. It's possible that either faction may request mercenaries or solos to help handle their opponents in various gangs they face, but always remain cautious when dealing with any gang, and the animals are absolutely no exception to that rule. There are smaller gangs, more fractured with less influence, or gangs that aren't on the tip of the mainstream media tongue, that will be covered in this portion of the report. Now, I assure you, if we uncover more information on these smaller or lesser well-known gangs, we will rectify this report to ensure you have the current knowledge on the political makeup of Night City's underworld. Firstly, you have the Tyger Claws. Now, it's not spelt in your typical fashion, but Tyger. Supposedly, this version of prescriptive text is to harken back to their ancestral Japanese heritage, but like many things in Night City, it's often a perversion of the original. The Tyger Claws are a gang focused on the underground street racing elements, salvaging cars, and the more typical Yakuza style of gangbanging, decked in street katanas and luminescent tattoos. Next, the Valentinos are one of the larger gangs within Night City and have a historical presence that has plagued unsuspecting women within clubs or social areas. Loosely, they're more a club of sexual predators rather than an actual street gang, as they typically only target females of high social or beauty status, and are only a danger to those targets, plus any potential male or otherwise entourage. This report speculates that many of you will likely pass on Valentino contracts, as this form of gang action is most despicable in nature, so much so that they've made enemies with almost every other gang in Night City, often targeting female companions of their opposing opponents. They are rumored to meet in the shadows of Night City to compare their, quote, conquests, unquote, as they have no other goal beyond seducing women. Next, we have the Wraiths, one of the largest groups of Raffen Shiv, or what many consider to be the most notorious of nomads. Many consider these individuals to be lesser humans, unfit for any social interaction beyond that of a bullet or the cut of a knife, and they will likely answer you with the same upon any encounter, whether wrapped in goodwill or otherwise. Ultimately, they are outcasts, living amongst the wastelands surrounding Night City, unfit for civilized life, rife with corruption, death, and warfare. They travel quickly from point to point in modified desert vehicles, able to catch unsuspecting prey if they are unprepared for the wastelands. Rumors abound around the race is that one of their vehicles has a bounty for capture and recover. It's an elusive, metallic monstrosity, boasting over 1,000 horsepower, aptly named the Reaver. I'm sure many will attempt to capture and sale of such a prized possession, but the wiser amongst you may come to realize that the quest is not worth the reward, unless you don't mind the wasteland and its inhospitable welcome. Finally, you have the 6th Street Gang, veterans of the most recent Fourth Corporate War, those of the Arasaka and Militech corporations, now left unemployable after the nuke detonation within the Arasaka corporate tower. Now, we've covered the Fourth Corporate War in more detail in a previous report, if this has potentially captured your intrigue, should you seek more information. The 6th Street are your more traditional vigilantes, focusing on providing safety and security with the objective of bringing an end to gang chaos propagated throughout the city. Unfortunately, vigilantism is still a federal and state offense, and regardless of their good intentions, often they find themselves on the negative side of public opinion, with many stating their mission statement is that just a claim, and that their actions are ultimately self-serving in nature. Hopefully, at this point we've covered just enough to provide you additional relevant contextual information to form an opinion around some of the gangs you may encounter when you happen to embark within Night City. These gangs, their leadership, their actions, and history all provide rich backstory and may help you further decide which contracts align with your own moral compass, whatever that may look like. But the gangs themselves are ultimately in it for themselves. They may see a mercenary like you, regardless of how great your feats may be, as just another hand looking for quick cash, motivated not by loyalty or tribalism, but by your own greed. This report's intention is not to judge your actions in Night City, but rather arm you with enough information to form the next step on forming allegiances, or potentially crushing your enemies or steering clear altogether. Whomever you choose to battle against, side with, or otherwise, know that you will have the opportunity, know the chance to craft your name upon the concrete walls of this city's history, and etch yourself as another fabled mercenary amongst your peers.